Okay. So hi Shay. I guess for anyone watching this in the future, this is Shea Siegert from uh, Alaska, but the Institute for Political Innovation. And so I'll jump right into the questions. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your history working for Republicans, Democrats, or on political campaigns in general, and what brought you to nonpartisan reform?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Daniel. And it's a broad question. So my name's Shea Siegert. I was the campaign manager of ballot measure 2 up in Alaska in 2020. My history working with candidates of all shapes and sizes and parties and lack thereof really kind of started when I was 16, working for kind of working in and around politics. And then when I got up to Alaska, I really noticed like there is a very big time, very present independent streak here. You know, over 60% of people registered to vote in Alaska choose not to register with either party. I'm one of them. And basically, like what I saw was that no party can really claim any group of people, and more accurately, no Alaskan can really be lumped into one party or the other. And when you only have two options, it makes it really tough for democracy as a whole and voters. And so my history comes, I was kind of born and raised a conservative, and then drifted more center and more center and more center. And now I'm coming to the end, and I've run or worked on over 25 campaigns, candidates and ballot initiatives. And I've worked for Republicans, independents, and Democrats. I always say, like, I've probably elected more Democrats to various offices than any other party. And when it comes to working on the policy side, I've only ever worked for Republicans and independents. And so it's kind of like, that's kind of the Alaska way. It's the idea that Ted Stevens put forth in the quote when he says, you know, to hell with politics, I just want to do what's right for Alaska. And that's kind of me in a nutshell, along with kind of a smattering of my partisan professional history.
Awesome, thanks. The next question was, what was Proposition 2 and what were its main goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. The main goals were to really look at our electoral system and provide the most amount of power, voice, and choice to Alaska voters as possible. And kind of this impetus is when you look at our current electoral systems with the combination of, you know, closed partisan primaries plus first past the post general elections, you kind of get this scenario where you have two circles, one being serving the public interest and one being reelected. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a Venn diagram where the two circles don't touch when you look at plurality elections. And the idea was that if we can move those circles as much together as we possibly can, where serving the public interest is in your best interest to getting reelected, that's a better system. And so how we did that was, or moved towards that, was Alaskans for Better Elections and Ballot Measure 2, which did three things. It opened up our partisan primaries. So no longer the political or the state subsidies to political parties. Basically, all of the candidates are going to run on the same ballot, regardless of partisanship or lack thereof, voted on all of the voters, by all of the voters. So all of the voters get the exact same ballot with the exact same candidates on it. And the top 4 vote getters move on from that primary election on to the general election, where they're ranked 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the idea is that you won't be able to win an election unless you get over 50%. That is a rule within ranked choice voting in the general election. And so it forces your hand and incentivizes candidates to now campaign to a broader electorate, or the broader electorate. Because before, we saw people winning with 35, 36%. And when they get elected that way and they go in to represent their district or what have you, they're normally just representing that 35 or 36% because it's what's going to keep them their job. And so the idea was to flip those incentives on their head. The final policy that we passed within ballot measure 2 was an anti-dark money piece. Basically, the aim was to shine a light on the true sources of funds. So before, what would happen is a wealthy individual would give to a super PAC nationally. That super PAC would give to a PAC in state supporting a candidate or cause. And Alaskans would never see the name of the individuals as to where that money came from. And so now, under the new anti-dark money rules, you not only see the super PAC's name, but you also see the names of the people who contributed those funds.
Okay. Cool stuff. Wow. Would you say that, like, most Alaskans, like, one piece or another appealed, or was the package pretty appealing for most Alaskans?
I think I can't say with a ton of certainty because we don't have that sort of data, but I will say our polling stayed throughout the whole process, or throughout the whole campaign. Our polling on the various issues stayed above 50 for every single issue.
Okay.
I think the way I like to explain it is that the dark money portion, of course, it's in the 80th percentile of support. And that was really an ability for us to open the door to have a conversation. We would have a conversation, and maybe we'd lead that conversation with dark money, and then that would get us a foot in the door to having the conversation about open primaries or ranked choice voting. But then you go to a different spot in the state and you're leading with open primaries, and then you're going to a different spot and you're leading with ranked choice voting. And so it really gave us the ability to pass sort of this electoral system that, people got brought to the table by different parts of it, but stayed at the table for the whole of it.
Wow. Let's see. Okay. How was the wording of the ballot measure determined in Alaska?
Yeah, so basically what happens in Alaska is with the citizens initiative or a ballot initiative, you write it as a group of individuals. You have an idea, you write it down, and you propose the idea. For ballot measure 2, we wanted to make sure that we were ever transparent, so that no one could ever claim that we were, hiding the ball or trying to pass a hive mind idea from the other party. And that those claims did end up getting made. But what we'd point back to is our initiative, which was 26 pages. It was drafted in legislative drafting format, which is not a requirement in Alaska. We had a group of the best elections attorneys from all over the state, and kind of answer this question of how do we get a better electoral system in our state. And that idea, the ideas that arose from that were the open primaries, ranked choice voting, and anti-dark money pieces. The initiative was then proposed to the lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor's office and attorney general have a review process, and then they either accept or reject it. They can also make suggestions. They did choose to reject it. We went to the Supreme Court during the campaign over the single subject clause. We won that court case in front of the Superior Court as well as the Supreme Court of Alaska, and then we were on to the campaign trail.
Wow. Okay, so in advocating for these reforms, what was your main strategy for approaching voters, politicians, and the public? And what kind of opposition did you run into, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah. So when we were messaging about this, we were always talking about the voters because that's always what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
We never messaged, this will get rid of this candidate or this will be the silver bullet for you. And your concerns with politics and politicians. It's absolutely not a silver bullet, but it's a road to getting to a better system, or the best system. The other thing is that in communicating this, like, we needed cross-partisan support, we needed nonpartisan support, we needed all of those things because this needed to be a homegrown, home run effort. And what I mean by that is making sure that we didn't go to, the normal political elites in trying to pass this. First, we needed to, run it by people. And so we started by socializing it in rural Alaska, making sure that folks really understood the policies, and then asking, would you support this? Would you not? We came out with one of the most diverse, one of the best coalitions of support this state's ever seen, with our Alaskan Natives for better elections, our elected leaders for better elections, which were Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and our steering committee, which was made up of, just a diverse group that was very representative of Alaska and Alaskans. The opposition was, kind of what you might expect, but also what you wouldn't. This was the first campaign in Alaska history that both Alaska Right to Life and Planned Parenthood joined the opposition against it. We had U.S. Senator Mark Begich, who was our last Democratic U.S. Senator, and GOP Governor Dunleavy, our current governor. They paired up against it. They had their own reasons for doing that. And I think that at the end of the day, Alaskans wanted to take back a lot of power, a lot of voice and choice in their elections. And so didn't matter really who came out against it, but rather, what was happening in the state at the time. Because really what was happening was people were getting more and more convinced that we needed a change and we needed it soon.
Wow. Thank you. See, did you run into any messaging issues? Were there any controversies over the wording being used or anything to that effect?
Not really. We were, like I said, we were ever transparent. And if people wanted to read what the initiative did, because, or like how it worked, we had an open door policy to the extent that you can during a pandemic. And we also, were able to share tons of information about our donors, information about the campaign operations, as well as, what we were trying to do.
Okay. So you would say that transparency was a big help in helping Alaskans to see what you were trying to do? Absolutely.
We had to show, fellow Alaskans, we had to prove our own credibility first, because, this is like a fundamental right of being American is your right to vote. And we were changing the kind of structure of how those votes are counted and who's able to vote. And we were broadening who's able to vote in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And so we needed to establish that credibility early so that, people knew when we were talking to them, we were giving them the straight answer, the facts, and
Mhm.
everything else. And I really am quite proud of the entire team. We all worked pretty hard on that.
Cool. So there are rumors circulating that Alaska's already experiencing improvement in the legislative process, now that the incentives of Final Four voting are kicking in. Is that a well-founded rumor, or are different people excited that they will be able to work across the aisle and other things like that?
I think from my extremely biased opinion, I would say they are well founded. Just a few weeks after the results of the ballot measure 2 race were certified, we formed the only bipartisan House coalition in the country, in our state House. We averted a government shutdown by relying on Republican legislators to go against a Republican governor, which is something you don't see very often. And I would think that the fact that the threat of an open the threat of a closed primary is no longer there was at the forefront of those conversations. Now when you look at a political issue as an elected leader, your incentives are changed. Your incentives are to appeal and take care of and raise up issues that resonate with over 50% of your district. And when we talk about power cost equalization, which is a huge topic in Alaska, you talk about government services through our ferry, which is a public entity, or a state entity, and various other issues that we're facing, along with our fiscal turmoil. We really need to have a system that adequately represents voters and gives politicians the right incentives as well as the freedom to do what their district really deserves and needs /wants.
That's good to hear. So have public servants come out to say anything that they, I guess, are surprised by, or that they're excited by now, if that makes sense, after Prop 2?
I think they're, in large part, we're seeing a lot of excitement, a lot of curiosity, and still, I think that after it passed, we still had some folks that were not happy that it passed, but the amount of folks that got on board with it and wanted to figure it out and understood, like, now this is the law of the land. How does it work? The amount of outreach we had after the results were certified was great, from people who, co-chaired the opposition to folks who were already on our side but wanted to understand more. It's been, I think the 3 words I would use to describe the reaction would be excitement, curiosity, and kind of the just general happiness that we were able to do something that was a first in the country electoral reform.
Very exciting. So what is the Institute for Political Innovation, and how would people link up with y'all, and what can they do going forward to help?
Yeah. The Institute for Political Innovation is a cross-partisan nonprofit that was founded by Catherine Gale, kind of as a result of the book that she paired up with Michael Porter to write from the Harvard Business School. And what it does is outlines the problem extremely well with our current electoral system, and then provides a solution, which is final five voting. So instead of 4 candidates moving on from the primary election, there would be 5 candidates moving on. Just providing for more opportunity, more less barriers to entry for candidates, as well as more competition and better results. And so what IPI does is looks at the scholarship and theory of these various policies, as well as works to support campaigns across the nation that are looking at passing final five voting.
Okay.
And how you can link up with us, we have the website at instituteforpoliticalinnovation.org. You can email me at my email at siegert, SIEGERT, at political-innovation.org. Or you can just go out to the website and fill out a contact form. You know, that these changes are needed. They are extremely necessary, especially in this day and age. And it's extremely fun to really take hold of your state and make sure that, you know, you are headed on the right direction in terms of electoral reform and stepping into the 21st century.
Wow, thanks so much. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Daniel. I've got to run, but I appreciate it.
Definitely. Have a great one.
You too.